Are there any classes right now who you would say have a similar effect on students?
That's a good question. You know, it's hard because a course like that, I mean, we probably have some, I would like to think that some of like our systems courses, some of our theory courses in different ways are big challenges to students. But, it's hard to, there's definitely been a sort of a attitudinal shift, I would argue, in computer science over the past couple decades, in the sense that back then, the people who were in it were really in it because they were interested in the material, right? There was no like, funnel into it. It wasn't like, oh, you're smart, you should go become a software creator someday. It was like, what is that again? It was just a lot smaller. And so now I think one of the big things that we contend with as a department, as a field, is just the sense that we have people coming into this, and some of them are there because they're genuinely interested in technology, and some of them are there because this is sort of a route to a potentially
a good job,
a comfortable, well-paying job, right? And every field has had to deal with this. Medicine has been dealing with this for a long time, right? In a sense, and like when my wife and I were in graduate school, we spent a period of time where we were working with Harvard undergraduates in this capacity that they call them resident tutors. It's sort of like an RA here,
right?
And I remember, like, at the time having a lot of talks with students, and particularly, and I don't want to single out the doctors, but I felt like the doctors were frequently very confused if you ever sort of challenged their choice of vocation. It was like, is that really a good thing? Like, the medical system's really messed up. And they'd be like, what? Really? No. Because it was one of these things where it was just like, okay, I'm going to make a lot of money. People are going to think I'm doing good in the world, right? It's sort of a profession for smart people. And so it checked a lot of boxes. But some of them had never really like thought, do I actually want to be a doctor? I'm actually interested in this job, right? And I think in computer science now we have a little bit of that happening. So it's just different. So I don't know if we could run a course like that here, right? I mean, you could run it as an optional thing, and just the expectation is that, okay, this course is really going, and I think ECE seems to have some courses like this, right? At least based on the memes that I see, right? Operating systems courses have a tendency, I think, to be very involved, right? There's just a lot to do, I'm not sure that's always a great thing. I mean, I actually remember Margot saying something. It's one of the sort of comments about course design that I've always remembered. She was pointing out that because she had designed a lot of the class, she put a lot of work into it. She was very proud of it, and the students generally appreciated it, or at least they said they did. And I remember asking her about this once. She's like, "Well, that's the thing, though. If people have completed something difficult, they tend to want to reflect on it fondly. Like you want to hope that it's worth it, right?
Right.
And so if you can make students do enough work, you can sort of pull this mind game on them where by the time they're done, they'll be like, oh, it must have been worth it, right? Because you kind of hope it was, because if it wasn't, you did a lot of work for nothing, right? So I think that's a danger, right, in terms of courses where sometimes you get to the point where it's almost like the work is its own justification, right? The course being difficult is sort of like the point, as opposed to thinking, maybe there's ways to restructure this class so that it's not as difficult, but students are still learning kind of as much as you want, right? So systems courses, I think, have a problem with this in general. And I'm a systems person, so I feel like I could say that, right? There's just sort of a haziness attitude sometimes that happens, which is too bad because I think the area is really neat, but I think a lot of students get turned off by it because it just feels like endless C programming and psychballs, right? And there are some really neat design principles that you can learn in those courses, but sometimes I think they're just too much at this point. So,
in your classes, do you have a way to sort of filter out those students and like know, okay, this person is here because they're genuinely interested, or how can you tell if someone is there?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think you can necessarily. I think that first of all, like, my course is early enough that I think that students are still discovering their motivation, right? And we want to allow that to happen. there's no, I mean, I will say that over the years I've been here, like I've had a lot of really fantastic interactions with non-majors, right? With CS plus X majors, right? I mean, with CS majors too, right? But I feel sometimes that, you know, something about how we're admitting students maybe, you know, it's just gotten very competitive at this point, right? We're certainly doing a great job of admitting very academically prepared, very intelligent students, right? You know, and on some level, like I don't think it's necessarily our job to try to filter for people that have a genuine interest in anything. Right? What does that mean? You know, how would you tell? But yeah, I mean, there's still a mix, right? I mean, and I think it can come out over time, right? I think sometimes students that end up here and aren't sure why they're here will develop an appreciation of the material as they go, right? One hopes so, because otherwise it's like you're lined up to do something you don't like very much. But that happens too in a variety of different areas, so it's certainly not limited to computer science.